Spiderman, Spiderman, Spiderman. That's my best Jonah Jameson impression. Let me know how I did. Welcome to Video Game Leaks, everybody. Chaos here. Spider-Man 2, to be exact. Now, the 2018 Spider-Man was a smash hit. I mean, both Sony and Insomniac Games, they're happy. Widely considered to be one of the best, if not the best, superhero game ever made, but there's some Arkham games out there that could compete, and the recent PC port was reportedly the second largest PC launch in the history of PlayStation Studios. Now, despite being a single-player game, Spider-Man has maintained a massive following for several years, with the modding community now having their way with it, and it seems inevitable that some kind of multiplayer mod would be available in a matter of months. But data miners have had a week or so to dig into the game files, and it seems that Insomniac was way ahead of us, as there's evidence of some kind of multiplayer mode in the PC version of Spider-Man 2 Remastered, and even though it's not officially playable or anywhere near complete, its existence implies there could be something in the works for Spider-Man 2. Welcome to the channel, everybody. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you have those notifications on. We're going to be talking about Spider-Man 2 multiplayer leaks today, so sit back and enjoy. Now, it's rather common for studios to use their game as a virtual testing ground for a sequel, and looking at the lines of unused game code in the PC version of the Spider-Man Remastered game, it is heavily implying that some kind of multiplayer or co-op mode was cut from the final build, and is possibly in the works for Spider-Man 2. Now, there are currently lines of code in the game that say things like Peter Parker is the superior Spider-Man, Miles Morales is the superior Spider-Man, and superior Spider-Man winner message. This kind of stuff you would find in a multiplayer game where players are trying to level up and make themselves stronger. So, perhaps Peter and Miles are fighting waves of enemies and completing objectives, with the reward being the title of Superior Spider-Man, or maybe even access to the Superior Spider-Man suit. Maybe there was going to be some kind of horde-based mode or time trial mode where players controlling Peter and Miles would try to one-up each other in a friendlier competitive setting. Now, interestingly, there are two other lines of code that seem to suggest co-op. Digging into the game's files will reveal a line that reads, "If set and in co-op, character 2 will see this text, debug only." And another that reads, "If set and in co-op, character 2 will see this text." This means there are two explicit references to a co-op mode in a game that doesn't have any kind of multiplayer, which is extremely strange. Also, in case you didn't know, Miles Morales is not a playable character in Spider-Man Remastered, which makes this even more puzzling. Why is there game code for a playable Miles in a game where he's not playable? And why are there multiple references to co-op mode in a strictly single-player game like Spider-Man Remastered? Well, here come the theories, so get ready. My first theory is that Spider-Man Remastered was originally going to have some kind of co-op function with Miles as a second playable character, but it was cut during development. Now, in case you didn't know, or maybe you forgot, Spider-Man Remastered originally launched as a bundle with Spider-Man Miles Morales, which was a standalone sequel to the original game. So the Remastered is virtually identical to the original 2018 release, but obviously with improved visuals, load times, DLC, and costumes. But what if Insomniac was originally going to include a multiplayer mode in the remaster as an additional incentive to buy it? Gamers, they're usually pretty annoyed when a remastered game comes out with minimal changes from the original, especially when it's bundled with a new one. You guys remember the remaster of COD 4 that came bundled with Infinite Warfare but didn't even include all the original game's content? So what if Insomniac was originally trying to sweeten the pot of Spider-Man Remastered by adding some kind of co-op mode starring Peter Parker, and then recently introduced Miles Morales as a second playable character? If the mode never made it very far into development, it would make sense. While there's only a few lines of code remaining, and it's likely that Insomniac never expected anyone to discover those remnants of what used to be. The co-op mode starring Peter and Miles would have been really, really cool, and it would have been a cool way to tie two games together and create some kind of synergy between them, which would further incentivize people to buy both the bundle. Now, it's not the most exciting theory, but it also perfectly leads into what I think is the most likely outcome of all these leaks. Personally, I think these game code lines acknowledge co-op and multiplayer, and there's some kind of precursor to a multiplayer mode in Spider-Man 2. Now, the official sequel is confirmed to feature both Peter and Miles as playable characters, and if the first trailer is anything to go off of, there will likely be some kind of tag team system between them, similar to what was in Batman Arkham Knight. Insomniac has implied that Spider-Man 2 will be a single-player game, but what if they revive this scrap co-op mode and include it? It would make more sense to include some kind of co-op mode in Spider-Man 2, now that both Peter and Miles have been solidified as characters within that universe, and they're already both in the game with their own animations, their own abilities, and their own combat styles. It's very common for features to be cut from a game only to be completed and added to the sequel, and with the recent discovery of the scrap co-op mode, I truly think Insomniac may be planning a revival in the sequel. The combat in Spider-Man 2 is going to feature 2 playable Spider-Man as integral parts of the gameplay loop, so why not find a way to capitalize? It's going to be a single-player game first and foremost, but that doesn't mean Insomniac isn't going to include some kind of cool co-op challenge mode, or even a co-op PvE experience, which would explain the whole Miles Morales is a superior Spider-Man thing. I mean, that would be a good way to reward whatever player is doing well. So that's my headcanon. Spider-Man Remaster was going to have some kind of co-op mode starring Peter and Miles, but it was scrapped during development, leaving behind only a few lines of unused code. But now that Insomniac is working on a sequel starring both of their Spideys, they're reviving the co-op mode and using Spider-Man Remastered as a testing ground for this tag team combat style, at least internally. Now, there are currently no multiplayer functions for Spider-Man 2 confirmed, but then again, we don't really know anything concrete about the gameplay aside from the fact that both Peter and Miles will be playable. Do you guys remember the tag team sections of Batman Arkham Knight and how awesome they were? They were good. This game, it's screaming for a co-op mode, and it just, I don't know. We'll see. Insomniac may actually be fulfilling the quiet wishes for a co-op open-world superhero game, even if the main story is single-player. I'm good with that. I just keep going back to a Spider-Man Horde mode. Honestly, I think this is the best of both worlds. The story is single player, but the free roam would have some kind of co-op function, and with there being undeniable remnants of a co-op mode in Spider-Man Remastered, I think it's highly likely that Spider-Man 2 could get it up and running, especially since there's now 2 starring characters. Plus, this opens up so many doors for other playable characters, other challenges in the future, again, similar to the Arkham series. Remember how Arkham City and Arkham Knight had multiple playable characters, and each character had their own set of challenges and achievements? What if Spider-Man 2 launched with Peter and Miles, but later they added other characters: Black Cat, Venom, Wolverine, Kraven the Hunter, Batman. I'm kidding. That would be crazy though. Anyway, all the evidence seems to point at some kind of co-op capability in Spider-Man 2, but only time will tell how elaborate or intricate it would be in the final build. So I leave you with this question, VideoGameLeaks subscribers. Would you want this in there? I say absolutely 100% yes. It's not going to mess with the single player experience. It's going to stand on its own, right? The single player is what everybody's buying this for. But if there's extra replayability and longevity in a co-op mode that could actually be fun and replayable, you can't. Why not? And if there's like wave-based levels, that would be absolutely amazing. And then you fight a mini boss, and then you fight a big boss, and you get your way all the way to whoever. Dr. Doom if you want. It doesn't matter. I think it would be really cool. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you soon.